Alright, so which graph represents the effect of pH on the activity of a digestive enzyme? So now they're asking the effect of pH on the activity of a digestive enzyme. So a digestive enzyme, you gotta look here. So the first graph, it looks very vague because there has to be an endpoint, but there is no endpoint over here. If you look at graph B, it looks kind of sensible because like there is definitely an endpoint. It increases, and then at a certain point the active site denatures and then it falls back, but the activity of enzyme also decreases as pH increases. So 7 is the optimum. It looks sensible. If you look at C, this is as the pH increases, the activity of the enzyme decreases, and then when it comes to it's very vague to me because it's supposed to be the opposite of this. Because normally if you see the digestive enzyme, for example, if you take the stomach acid, which is pH 2, it's supposed to be high, the activity of enzyme. This one's supposed to be on top, but that's not the case actually, so it's definitely wrong. This one is definitely out of the blue. There is no endpoint at all. This is definitely not this. So it definitely gotta be B. Right. So in which process is oxygen a waste product? So if you see over here, you gotta check that active transport, no. Aerobic respiration, no. Oxygen is used as a reactant. Instead, it's not a waste product. Anaerobic respiration, not at all. Photosynthesis, yes, because they use carbon dioxide and water, so you get oxygen and glucose. So it's definitely gotta be D. Which layer in the leaf contains interconnecting air spaces? So if you see this part, like they literally just like shifted the whole thing. Normally this part is over here and this thing is over here, but anyways, I love confusing us guys, so it's pretty normal. So if you just see, this is the upper epidermis, this is the palisade mesophyll, this is the spongy mesophyll, right, and this is the lower epidermis. So since it's the spongy mesophyll, you need to remember that spongy mesophyll has a lot of air spaces in between them. So now that the question is asking about interconnecting air spaces, it's definitely got to be C, which is the spongy mesophyll. Where does egestion take place? Definitely takes place here. You need to remember the different excretion in egestion. Egestion is basically the waste products that are actually did not take part in any chemical reaction in the body, whereas excretion is those waste products that took part in the chemical reaction of the body. For example, urea is considered as excretion because it goes through several processes in the body, such as deamination, and then you know the ultrafiltration and all that stages. So that's all chemical processes taking place. Whereas feces, it's not the case at all. Feces is considered egestion instead of excretion. Alright, so now that they're asking about egestion and excretion, they both take place in the same one, in the rectum area, so, or you can just the anus. So it's literally the same way. You must be knowing the difference between egestion and excretion, right? Now, if you guys notice, this question has been repeated earlier, I think in 2015 or 2016 paper, I don't remember, but yeah, it has been repeated, but not in this form. They repeated for the chapter of the insect chapter about the wind pollination, insect pollination, but they now use it as the alimentary canal chapter. So now the diagram shows a fat globule, which is this, in one part of the alimentary canal, and the same fat globule, which is this, in another part of the alimentary canal. In which part of the alimentary canal are P and Q found? So this is basically before the digestion has taken place, before any acids, chemicals has touched this. This is after it has touched it. So this, if you see duodenum, definitely not, because this is after the stomach area. If it's any food particle or any food part after the stomach, that means chemical process has taken part, so this is definitely not that. Ileum, definitely no. Esophagus, yes, because esophagus is right before the stomach, and normally the food particles is still you could say in smaller pieces, but no chemical acids or anything like that have not touched it yet. And the rectum is definitely not that. Whereas So P, which is like the bigger one, it's gotta be the esophagus, and the Q, which is very small parts of it, like it's all really small. So if you see here in stomach, since it is not this, it can't be stomach. Esophagus, definitely not. Since for P, the answer is esophagus, so it's gotta be ileum. And D, definitely not, so it's gotta be 15C. If you see, because you have gotta look at the options over here, then you can correlate whether or not this piece is in the mouth, or it's in the esophagus, in the stomach, or whatsoever. And then accordingly you can find out which place will these particles be. Right, I won't say particles, I would say bits of the food. Yeah. The diagram shows enzymes and the products of the reaction that catalyze. So you have the amylase, lipase, protease, and these are the options here. So which diagram matches the enzyme? So let's check out one by one. So the amylase, simple sugars. Okay, lipase, amino acid, oh definitely not. Protease, fat, definitely A, it's not A, definitely not A. Amylase, let's look on B. Amylase, oh my god, it's definitely not B as well, because amylase is not amino acids. Lipase is fatty acid diester. Protease, no, not at all. If you look at C, the first option is amylase with simple sugar is correct. Lipase with fatty acid and glycerol. Protease, yes. So C is the most sensible one, because if you but just to be sure, check out D. So amylase, simple sugar, correct. Lipase with amino acid and glycerol, this doesn't make sense at all, so it's definitely not D, it's gotta be C actually. So now, which statement about a function of xylem tissue is correct? So it carries glucose from the root to the leaves. Carries glucose. This is definitely not correct at all. It carries water and mineral ions, not glucose. It helps to support stems and leaves. Yes, that's correct. This is one of the function of xylem. It is the only transportation of the plant. That's definitely wrong. Besides xylem, you have the phloem. It carries water away from the leaves. No, definitely not. You don't carry water away from the leaves. So it's definitely gotta be B, because the rest all is ridiculous. It doesn't correlate with xylem. It's definitely gotta be B. It helps to support stems and leaves. What is part of the definition of transpiration? And then let's look at all of them. The loss of water vapor from plant leaves by evaporation of water to the surface and mesophyll cells. Because, you know, if you memorize the definition of transpiration according to the syllabus that's mentioned, it's literally the copy paste of that actually. Because if it's transpiration, it has to be the loss of water vapor. If you check out B, the movement of molecules into the cells of the organism, where it's not does. The movement particles rest from a region of lower concentration, that this is definitely diffusion. The transport mineral ions from the roots into the stem. This is osmosis actually, but osmosis active transport. But now they're asked in transpiration, so it's definitely got to be this. Transpiration is always to do with water vapor, but none of this is to do with water vapor, so it's got to be A. This is like one key term: transpiration, water vapor. But there's nothing mentioned water vapor over here in BCD, so it's got to be A. Now, the diagram shows the circulation of blood in an organism. So in which part of the organism is the location of the capillaries in a box? Now they want the location of the capillaries, because this is the capillaries. Oxygen to the capillaries, carbon dioxide. Oh, okay. So if you see properly, I mean, if you see in one glance, you just be confused, like where the hell is this? Like there is no organ drawing, there is no organ part mentioned, there's no drawing, it's just words and boxes given. That's definitely confusing. Now what I noticed is that in the latest MCQ papers, probably for your October November exams this year, they might not even be giving you a heart like picture. They might end up giving you something similar like this, which is very confusing. And if you see this properly, oxygen to the capillaries, to the carbon dioxide, heart to heart, and the capillaries go back to the heart go to the capillaries, from carbon dioxide to oxygen to the heart. Right, so if you see this properly, this one is actually coming from the heart. This capillary is this part. This is actually that part of the blood that contains oxygenated blood. Okay, this is the part that contains oxygenated blood, and this part is actually going to the body. I'm sorry for mentioning it's coming from the body. It's actually going to the body, because this is the waste product that gets excreted later on from your lungs through your nose or mouth. So this is actually being utilized, because oxygen is being brought from the body to be used in the capillaries, and the carbon dioxide is taken from the capillaries and to be excreted from your lungs, and then later on to your nose, right? And then later that same oxygenated blood is taken back to the heart, and then from the heart it goes to a lot of places, but they just like literally just simplified. Again, it goes to the capillaries, and now this one contains the deoxygenated blood. It goes to the capillaries, diffusion takes place, carbon dioxide goes out, oxygen goes in, or sometimes carbon dioxide not entirely all the carbon dioxide diffuses out from the human body, because you need like little amount of it. So if you remember the percentage proportion of the expired and inspired, then you can actually know. This is the deoxygenated blood, and this is where the carbon dioxide is being diffused outside, and then oxygen is being taken out, and it goes back to the heart. So this one, if you remember, this is actually located in the alveoli. It's located in the alveoli, because in the alveoli, this is how all the gas exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place. And the alveoli is present in the lungs. So it's definitely not going to be fish or anything like that. So it's got to be the lungs, not body, because the alveoli is only present in the lungs. Right. The photomicrograph shows human blood, which blood component can carry out the process of phagocytosis. So it's definitely got to be this weird earthworm kind of, I should say, the cell, or that specific thing. Yeah. And this one, if I'm not mistaken, this is a lymphocyte that covers almost all of the part of the cell, but not entirely. This is also not a lymphocyte, but this is a phagocyte that has literally divided into two, so you need to figure out like this. Right, so now which diagram shows how a vaccination can lead to a long-term immunity? So antigen injected in the body, lymphocytes multiply, antibodies produced, memory cells produced. Memory cell injected, definitely not. Antigen injected, memory cells multiply. Doesn't make sense, so it can't be C at all. Antibody, oh, definitely not. So it's got to be A, because it's the most sensible one. Antigen is injected, which is literally vaccination. Okay, and you have the lymphocytes multiply in number, antibodies are produced, memory cells are produced. Memory cell can't be injected, antibodies can't be injected. The only thing that can be injected is antigen, which is present in the vaccination. So you need to know that thing, then you can answer this whole thing. Right, so air entering human lungs contains approximately 21% oxygen and 0.04% carbon dioxide. Which row shows the concentration of these gases in air leaving the lungs? So you need to remember the specific proportions of both oxygen and carbon dioxide in expired air. Now that the question is asking about leaving the lungs, which is literally expired air, if you see it over here again, they're asking expired air. So you need to remember the percentage of oxygen in expired air is 16%, meaning you breathe out, and percentage of oxygen and carbon dioxide in expired air is 4%. So over here they mention air entering human lungs contains entering inspired air is 21% and inspired carbon dioxide 0.04%. And if you think logically, less oxygen should be expired from the body, because oxygen is needed by a lot of organs and cells in your body. But carbon dioxide, since it's a waste product, it's a toxic thing which is not required much by the body. It's supposed to be in huge amounts compared to the inspired amount. So this definitely does make sense, and you have to memorize the numbers of inspired and expired thing. There's nothing much about logical thing, but you just need to memorize the values for that. After running a fast race, a student had pains in the leg muscles. This is usually cramps. The pain was caused by the buildup of a product of anaerobic respiration. Which product caused the pain? If it's all about pain, just know it's cramps. And if it's cramps, it's definitely a buildup of lactic acid in that part of the body. Since it's running, it's leg muscles, so there's definitely lactic acid. So now, which product caused pain? Carbon dioxide? No. This is a reactant. Ethanol? No. That's like for yeast. Lactic acid? Yes. Water? No, not at all. So it's got to be lactic acid, because this is the one that causes the pain, right? Now, the diagram shows the production and excretion of materials from the human body. Cells. So now, what are V, W, X, Y, and Z in the diagram? So cells, you have V, so cells to carbon dioxide to X, amino acids to liver. So now, what are V, W, X, Y, and Z in the diagram? So V, cells. V, aerobic respiration, you get. So now, if you see in part A, anaerobic respiration, and then X, kidneys. What? Doesn't make sense. Okay, let's continue it. And then W, amino acids to liver, and then from W you have deamination, and then Y is urea. Urea is okay, and then Z is lungs. What the heck? Is definitely not that. If you look at B, anaerobic respiration again, W is filtration. Liver in the filtration is normally present in the kidneys, the filtration part, so it's definitely not going to be this. C, V is aerobic respiration, you get carbon dioxide, and then at X you have the lungs, and then from amino acids to liver, and then you get deamination, then Y is urea, and then excess salt. Faster urea goes to the kidneys. In the kidneys, all the ultrafiltration takes place, the Bowman's capsule and all that. And then you have the aerobic respiration. Filtration doesn't take place in any part of this thing, so it definitely got to be C. So what is a function of synapse? So to allow impulses to travel in both directions, wrong. To ensure impulses travel one direction, this has got to be the correct answer. To release vesicles or to transport, no. There's only one function of synapse, and that's to make sure that all the impulse travel in one direction.